old Facebook photos. Like
we are live on the internet.
So a few of them.
And we have 0 viewers, so
This
is your chance. This is your chance to say something.
And so they just decided that it's like, you know,
Okay.
it's very going to be recording somebody who's like doing something weird late at night, and so they just call it
screen share.
Okay. And so it just became this joke. And at the time, I was still working in fitness, so most of my fitness friends use that hashtag.
Whoa. Oh wait, we have 3 viewers. Hi viewers. You guys, we have 3 viewers, so
Wow.
you know,
International.
feel the pressure. Hey people. I guess I'm sharing my screen, so you can't see me now. Anyways. Cool. Well, we might as well start, I guess.
Yeah.
What's your name?
Watson.
I said the dog never responds.
We're really
People
international.
always
We're
The dog never tells me their own
I
name.
didn't literally do it. Yeah.
Should we pop his collar off so that it doesn't?
Hello.
We
Checking the
probably
sound
have to go
settings.
to this little bit.
Actually, doesn't. It's like the sound volume is pretty good. First Gatsby Maintainer Summit. Really got this worked out. Just some people are already here, and we were like, wait, we have $4,000 in our open collective that I have no idea what to do with. So why don't we pay to get some people out here and talk about Gatsby stuff? One, two, three, few more that are coming here in Berkeley, California. And yeah, so I have a few slides, just kind of a state of the Gatsby. I should have said state of the Gatsby. Oh well. Anyway, state of Gatsby. Cool. So yeah, so Gatsby. Just quick intro for everyone who doesn't know what it is, which is probably not. Anyways, I guess it's not really intro, but this is just kind of like my overall thesis. As you know, Gatsby. It's like website building should be fun. It should be playful. It should be easy. You should just like, I have ideas, and then you make them, whatever. But it seems so often we get bogged down in all sorts of random stuff that have nothing to do with actually what you want to do, which is like put cool pixels on the screen and build interesting experiences. And so the whole goal of Gatsby is to eliminate friction around doing that, which is largely around building better building blocks, because that's another thesis too, is that we have better building blocks that makes everything simpler. If things are simple, then things are fun. And so Gatsby is kind of part of a much larger kind of tool revolution. Webpack and all the other bundlers and Babel and et cetera, React, of course, and other frameworks. So yeah, so again, make things fun. Make it easier to build rich experience. Make the web faster, et cetera. Part of that tool revolution is just like around how we think about, delivering experiences to the web. Previously it was kind of like pages were standalone. You click on something, you go back to the server and get a whole new thing, and et cetera, et cetera. But now with things like, prefetching and GraphQL and client-side driven applications, it's a much more seamless, rich, immersive experience, which is all great. Yeah, so part of that is like the tooling that we're using, moving from like template-driven type stuff to JavaScript frameworks with like component-driven UIs. Yeah, so a big question that drove the design of V1 and is continuing to drive a lot of my thinking about Gatsby is, how do we share data processing code with each other? So the smartest person alive is like maybe 3x more productive than the next tier of smart people, and then maybe 2. Anyways, I guess the point is like any one person, regardless of how good they are, they're fairly limited in what they can accomplish. And the only way that we like scale ourselves as like a civilization, or as like a group of people doing similar stuff is if we can share and kind of pool our collective efforts together. And so having ways to share things with each other, vastly, expands how quickly we can like accomplish things. And so something that, anyway, so something that was like really vivid and kind of in starting to use React and watching the React community grow is that all of a sudden there was a way to share UI components. We never had any way to share HTML before. Now all of a sudden we can say, hey, now we have this like thing that's like encapsulated and like can take programmatic input, programmatic manipulation, and we can share that with each other. And all of a sudden there's now thousands of React components, and when you do a React site, you're just like downloading React Bootstrap or something other cool like that, and like voila, you have all this like really rich functionality that you can go with. Then there's like this blog post that I really like that talked about this. Probably some of you have seen it. Unify sharing language by Mark. I actually don't know how to say his last name. Dalglash? I don't know. He asked the same thing about, so he's talking about CSS and JS, and he talked about the same thing that's like, hey, how do we actually share CSS with each other? So same kind of question. It's actually like, oh, wait, we don't actually share CSS with each other. I mean, we do in like a very limited ways. And then he was saying that this is like an interesting benefit of CSS and JS that we can actually perhaps share that. And he has this, graph of NPM that once we had a good package manager and a good module system for JavaScript, all of a sudden the number of like JavaScript libraries went from thousands to now like we're approaching like 300 million or something like that, 500 million or whatever it is, just like an insane growth. So so it's like React gave us that for sharing kind of HTML and like encapsulated functionality, and CSS and JS potentially, if we ever decide on a library, gives us a way to share CSS and styles with each other and themes potentially with each other. And so Gatsby, I think where its real potential contribution lies is sharing data processing code with each other. And so that's like, so recently actually we shipped this package search thing, which is really nifty. So you can search for plugins. So like Gatsby source plugins were up to 57 different plugins. And then if we search for transformer, we're up to 29. So now there's like, if you want to pull data from somewhere, some service, something, there are now 58 plugins that you just drop in, add a few configuration things, and bam, you have all this data available to like put right into your site. Same thing with transformations. If you want to like go for like Markdown or YAML or CSV or JavaScript syntax or XML, if you really want to, Excel, I mean all sorts of like all sorts of random things. Wow, wow, it goes. Anyways, it keeps going. You have all these things that again, you like have some data in some esoteric format. Boom, you can make it instantly available to you to do stuff. And so simplifying the whole process of getting data from somewhere onto your page is like a real win. Because right now you have to write your own glue script to make that happen, and that sucks. So anyways, so that's something that's been really exciting to see that kind of emerge. Just the other day, I was playing around with somebody wrote a Trello source plugin, and it was like really nifty because I set up like a little Trello board, and then I had like a couple lists, and I added cards, and the cards can have like Trello supports Markdown, and so the source plugin actually automatically exposes that, so you can like query like the HTML like converted from the Markdown. So anyways, I had these cards, and I was like building a little website with it. Anyways, it's really fun. It's actually kind of useful sometimes because like Trello can make like a really nice workflow where people can add cards in one column, and then when they get moved over to the next one, you rebuild the site, and then they like move into production sort of like when they're in that column, and like the ordering can matter and stuff. So anyways, like one of the big ideas to Gatsby is that React and its associated toolchain is the best way to build websites, and we should always do that. But where you manage data, like what is the best way to manage your data, can vary dramatically. And so Gatsby can be agnostic about where the data is being pulled from, while allowing you to use the best tools for building websites. Cool. So anyways, so done with thought leading. Anyways, so the community's been growing really fast. So since V1 release last July, we've nearly doubled GitHub stars from 10K or almost to 20K. Website uniques are up around, it waffles a bit, but it's around 11K per week. We have kind of a more or less kind of accurate way of measuring sites. This is probably low. So this is like a minimum number of new sites created every day, but it could be probably the total numbers, maybe 2x this. It's a little hard to say since we're not tracking exactly. Anyways, Twitter followers, we're up to from 1K to 5.5K. Contributors are like 3.4x. We're up to 670 total contributors, which is like really awesome to see. Just the sheer numbers. It's just like half the PRs are like new contributors, which is really fun to see. The last month alone, we've had 100 contributors, 237 merge PRs. So the velocity is high and growing. So I collected some awesome recent Gatsby stuff, which sounds very California, I figured. So anyway, so here's some just random sites. People are building Gatsby. Anyways, I don't know who these are, but it's a cool site. It's well done. Here's East Central. Optimizely did like a conference website. Has this like cool animation. Capital One built a little microsite for a new card. I guess they always have new cards. So that was easy. So this is a new starter that somebody did, which is like, I really like. I told him in like the PR when he like added it to the starters page. It's like, it feels kind of like the first like native Gatsby site that it's just kind of like, it's all just assuming, that it's all local and dynamic and that everything's kind of persistent and has lots of like little animations, built-in search. You have like a full screen. It's like a nice touch. Anyways, it's cool. It's like an application, but it's like for content. And I haven't seen too many people do that. It's kind of like you port like sites into Gatsby, and it's like a nice site, but it's faster. But this is kind of like, what does like a native app for content look like? And I think that's interesting to explore. This was a cool doc site, some open source print. They launched like just recently. I appreciate the typography. Pretty. And then Shannon here has been, so Shannon, she's a recent UX bootcamp grad. And so this was her final project or something? Yeah, so the packages search here. Anyway, so she designed it and has been kind of shepherding, getting the community to like build it out. Anyways, it just turned out really well. I showed it off a little bit earlier, but you're like, Google, oh, here's Google Analytics, boom. And you're like, boom, install instructions, boom. Anyways, she interviewed a lot of people too. And a lot of people are like, how do I find plugins? How do I find the right one? How do I quickly compare stuff? And this solves it in a really neat, elegant way. This isn't like new, but anyway, it's still cool. React.js on Gatsby. We've been doing a lot of fine tuning to the tutorial. So continuing to see lots of happy people going through the tutorial, so that's good. Syntax FM podcast, they did a podcast on why static site generators are awesome, but most of it was actually Scott like professing his love for Gatsby, which was really fun to hear. And he also he just launched a pro Gatsby tutorial, and Scott he's like a full-time. He does some client work, but he also just like pretty much full-time on just creating tutorials for all sorts of different technology. And his stuff is really good. He had like a free tutorial that he did as well for Gatsby, but he got like good enough feedback from that, and he just liked Gatsby so much that he did this whole pro tutorial, which looks awesome. And like he did some like screenshots and like other stuff from. I haven't watched it, but anyways, it's cool though. It's just like it's like there's kind of it's kind of like new technology starts, but then you kind of like work up to content and other. Anyway, this is just like another sign of Gatsby getting more real and accessible to people. So we launched V1 with this new GraphQL thing, and a lot of people are like, "What's GraphQL? It's so confusing." And we were like, "I don't know, figure it out." But anyways, we recently got around to actually writing like pretty good docs on like what is GraphQL and how do you use it and why do we use it, and how's it, what's special about it inside Gatsby. So that was really cool. And then Mike Alston here, he's been working on. He created a Docker instance which is always running the latest version of Gatsby, and so it lets us embed GraphQL right in this page. So this is like a live instance of things. So you can like, you can say description says blazing fast static site transfer. Anyways, it's cool. So now we can like demo like, hey, how do you write different queries? Like, how do you limit? And then these are kind of lame ones. The empty title. Anyways, so that's really cool. And then this is another cool site, Graph CMS, Headless CMS. They rebuilt their site in Gatsby. Hey, another Alston production. So he built this for, what was your client's name?
It was for Atomico, and so I worked in front end, called Studio.look. Shepherded the whole design and build through.
Okay. Yeah. So Mike's from London, so this is like a European. Anyways, but it's like I don't know. Anyways, it's cool though. It's again kind of like, well, actually, like I was saying earlier, like it's content, but it's kind of like an app for content, and kind of like all slides around and everything. So, anyways, it's interesting. It's cool.
They launched it live at a conference.
I remember reading about that. That sounds so high stress.
You're just on your bed with your pillow over your head. Anyways, here's another cool site. It's like photography, and it's all dynamic and fast and awesome. So Gatsby Manor, it's a community project to kind of like build a theme system for Gatsby, which is really exciting to see. And it's something that like in the core we want to move on definitely in the future, having native support for that. Here's another podcast that just rebuilt their site in Gatsby. Jason over here, he wrote a plugin authoring guide, which has been another kind of UX complaint that Shannon surfaces. Like, you were like, plugins are cool, I have no idea how to write one. And you're like, and I'm like, well, I don't know, read some source code. Come on, don't be lazy. But anyways, that's not a great response. So anyway, so this is really nice. It's like really clear, just like what are the concepts and what do you do with plugins, and like, anyways, so this is really helpful. Oh yeah, okay, so anyways, back slides. So that's the end. Cool stuff. And then, okay, so V2. V2 has been long in coming, but it actually has started making progress now. So highlights are Webpack 4. So we had been talking about doing Webpack 3, but how do you say his name again? Tobias. So Tobias Coppers. So he's the founder maintainer of Webpack. Anyways, he's helping us like make the upgrade to Webpack 4. And anyways, I chatted with him the other day for a bit, and it looks like it's actually pretty accomplishable, which I'm really excited about because there's a lot of really nice features in Webpack 4 that I was bummed that we weren't going to be able to jump to right away. Anyways, I'll get to exactly what that is. So Babel 7, another huge upgrade. Babel 6 has been out for several years. Babel 7 has like a ton of performance upgrades and other nice stuff. So we're almost certainly going to do this. I've done some initial prototyping around it, but there's this like kind of like hack basically to allow you to ship modern JavaScript to modern browsers. So something like 50% of browsers that support the most modern browsers, you can like create a special bundle that only they will download. Anyways, the upside of that is it's like 20-30% smaller JS bundles. And so we'll do like 2 parallel JavaScript builds, one of which for modern browsers, one of which for older browsers. and then the modern browsers will get much faster, nicer experience. Anyway, so that's really exciting. We're simplifying layouts. Some of you have seen that thread there probably. But anyways, that's kind of like a bad design choice as it turned out. So ripping that out in V2. And then also as part of that is like adding queries and components, which like everyone seems to want. And I think there is a way to support it that'll work pretty well. I actually have a prototype for the syntax. So I actually want to show some of you later, see what you think. Cool. So Webpack 4. We're jumping from Webpack 1 to Webpack 4, so it's a really big update. So tree shaking, we're going to get dynamic imports, split chunks plugin, which is just like amazing. It's just like how split like chunk splitting should work. It just kind of like it looks at all your dynamic imports, like every little chunk that you're creating, and then just makes smart bundles, smart common bundles out of that. So if you use comments chunk before, it's like going from like a Model T to a Tesla or something. Anyways, it's way faster than Webpack 1, like easily 50% plus faster. Also, Tobias is, that's not right again, is it? Tobias, okay. He's working on a extract text plugin replacement, which is really exciting, mini CSS extract plugin. And anyways, it'll give us like true CSS code splitting, which is like awesome. So which means anyways, larger sites, because like Gatsby like inline CSS. So like right now, like the larger your site, the more CSS you accumulate. And now we'll be able to inline just like the CSS for kind of the section of the site you're on, which is awesome. And then lazy load in the rest of it. So Babel 7, faster. We're getting automatic polyfilling for your targeted browsers. So you'll be able to specify, hey, I'm only like, this is an internal site. We're only like targeting latest browsers. And then it'll only polyfill what's necessary for those browsers. And we're also going to be adding like transpiling code in node modules because unfortunately more and more NPM packages are shipping syntax, like JavaScript syntax, which is not supported on older browsers. So if your site is supporting older browsers, then they'll just die. And it's not really any simple workaround that mere mortals can handle. So it seems like the simple solution is just transpiling. Anyways, and so it's kind of performance hit, but it seems like with all the other speed improvements, we'll still come out far ahead. Plus, we're also adding like thread or it's cache loader and thread loader, which will get multi-core and much better caching for Webpack builds. So that'll help speed a lot too. Cool. So almost done. So kind of our opportunity here, I think, is we have a window of opportunity to become really like the leading website framework, which is maybe a little bit of an audacious thing to say with like 10 people in a room. But I don't know. It's like the whole web is, everything is like changing really, really quickly. And there's like this like gap that's opened up from, the older ways of doing stuff. And like the question, I mean, it's like with startups, people always say, it's like, can startups get distribution before incumbents get innovation? And so that's kind of like where we're at now. It's like we have the innovation. So it's like, can we get, mind share distribution, like people like using Gatsby widely before older website frameworks actually kind of like say, hey, how do we actually adjust what we're doing to the modern way? There's an open question, of course, can they actually adjust? But they'll be able to adjust over time to a certain extent. But we have an opportunity to kind of like jump in with like a really nice modern solution and be the biggest out there, which is like really exciting. So challenges to that, scaling Gatsby to larger sites. I have some ideas here how to solve that. But anyways, that's something we'll need to tackle because if you can only use Gatsby for small sites, it's not a great solution for everyone. Also, just how to improve quality of what we're doing at the same time increasing velocity of improvements, and then also how to scale the community because we're already fairly large, but if we're going to be the leading website framework, we have to scale to 5,000 contributors and whatever. So there's a lot of growing pains that will come along the way. And so yeah, and I think everyone saw the agenda. So like this afternoon we're having an unconference where we'll just be people can propose topics of discussion and then we'll talk about these things. So these are great topics only ones I want to talk about anyways. Hopefully you guys have your own topics you want to talk about as well. Yeah, so any quick questions before we jump to the next speaker? I wonder if there's like online questions.
Going into your inception.
Yeah. I don't know if they can ask questions.
The question is really, is it a YouTube or?
Yeah, it's YouTube Live.
That should have comments.
That's a ginormous yak. Okay, never mind.
Relevant. Live Twitter feed.
Yeah.
Like an actual.
Learn while you
See
poop.
what he's talking about? I don't know.
Anyways, okay, cool. So, anyways, is there any questions by chance? I mean, we have lots of time to talk later, so I don't really care.
Good stuff.
Cool.
Who's up next?
I don't remember. Who's up next?
I think I was the second.
Sure, that sounds great.
This is crazy.
Okay,
Who doesn't want to follow the Gatsby creator at the Gatsby Summit?
So comfortable.
Well, so Eric is actually he's talking about he's doing this new thing.
Yeah. So, wow. Thanks for having me here, Kyle. So is this the first Gatsby Summit?
This is the first Gatsby Summit.
Wow. Well, it feels a little weird to be at the first Gatsby Summit not talking about Gatsby, but I have a different project. But here I'm gonna have to introduce myself a little bit because I don't think I've hung out with Kyle a little bit before, but I still need to introduce myself to the Gatsby community and to all of you all here. My name is Eric Vicente, and I've been building websites for most of my life, but for several of the past few years, I've been working at Facebook on React Native, and it's been extremely exciting to see all the React developers, all the JavaScript developers that I've been working with able to sort of start diving into mobile programming. And React Native has really bridged this huge gap between these massive mobile ecosystems of React Native, of Android and iOS. And now finally we can use the same skill set to build apps for both of those mobile platforms. And we're using the same skill set as we use to build apps on the web. But they're still separate ecosystems. It's not so easy to build one app that spans across web and mobile and can sort of ad hoc in the same way that we can between iOS and Android on web, or sometimes in the web world, we can switch between server rendering and client rendering depending on what we think is necessary. But it's not so easy to sort of have one component that you render both on web and on mobile. And the other complication that I see is that the community still hasn't really figured out the whole data management solution. There's a missing sort of back-end component in our ecosystem. Things like Redux are awesome. Things like GraphQL play a huge role in that. But GraphQL still needs a whole server. So I'm trying to figure out how to make it really easy for people to get started programming, assuming they know some JavaScript. I see my my screen is being shared here. I'm going to up the size a little bit for you. But that's my goal here, is to make it extremely easy for people to get started programming. Even if it means we need to leave behind some of the things in the past that might conflict with future technologies. For example, like the sort of things that we build upon are incredibly important. If we build upon technologies that we're going to have to sort of deprecate in a couple of months, then everyone's going to have to overhaul their things. So I'm trying to sort of build kind of a fresh playground for building stuff. Something that will include the data management story. Sorry, internet. Something that'll include the data management story, but as well as include the deployment story and sort of getting you to your first front end on every platform, allowing to write just a single component that works on the web with server rendering and works on mobile as well. So in case you can't tell, it's like a horribly ambitious project, but I'm having fun with it. And this is actually kind of the first public demo of it whatsoever. I haven't even demoed it to you, Kyle, so it's going to be... Yeah. I'm glad to have you all here and to sort of show you like a very rough prototype of what it could be like to hack on this in the future. So, I haven't prepared any slides, and if this feels like a highly unprepared off-the-cuff talk, then that's exactly what it is, because I've been hacking on this. I haven't really been preparing my presentation later. So Okay, let's try. Let's give this a go. Yarn. I'm going to do yarn create, and this framework is called Avon. So it's the Avon framework. Avon framework, actually Avon app. So this is just using the normal yarn create flow. It's like the same as create React app behind the scenes. Okay, well, that's a good time for it to fail. It's because I didn't provide a name for it. All right, what are we going to call it? Hello? Presentation? Let's just call it hello. This is, yeah, I did not type the command correctly. It's not, we haven't run into my bugs yet. I'm not saying we won't. So it's a relatively straightforward process. It's going to be the same thing as you're used to. You know, you cd into the folder and run it. Cd hello. Yarn start. Oh, I missed the cd hello. Cd hello, yarn start. And here it's going to ask me, oh, here it's unhappy because I'm already actually running an Avon server on 3000. Close your eyes, no one pay attention to what I'm doing here. Okay. Again, not a terrible bug. So yarn start. Okay, so it's given me this hello world in the browser. And I'm going to go ahead and open it up in the code. Just using VS Code these days. So you can see it doesn't really have much in the folder. In fact, the package.json is kind of a lie. You couldn't even install dependencies here. So don't pay too much attention to this. This is basically just giving you the start command, the yarn start command. But this is your app, is index.js. And you can see it renders on the browser, it renders on the server with, renders on the server here with React Native Web. So it allows us to use these sort of, here, let me make this a little bigger for you. It allows us to use these platform agnostic components like view and text to describe our application. And this is just the same old React Native component API. Or here, well, forget about that for now. Let's just go ahead and show you that this does, in fact, work. If I change the code, it works, but also you'll notice that it updates the running app because everything in this ecosystem is updated real-time with WebSockets. So that includes the application code and the data in your application itself. And I don't quite have a fully running demo of the data, but here we have a lot of Meteor people in the room, and I think that this is very spiritually similar to what Meteor was going for, which is that your data changes in your database, and it's definitely visible on the client. We talk about this next generation of web frameworks, Gatsby definitely being one of them. And what do we need that the previous generation of web frameworks didn't really provide? Like WordPress, for example, doesn't provide any real-time capabilities at all. So I think the next generation platform is going to have a story around real-time data updates in your application, but then also real-time code updates. And of course, the killer thing here is not just that we're writing an application that works on the web client and the web server. We've seen that a while. We've had Next around. Gatsby does some similar awesome things. But the real innovation here is that it also works on mobile. And this is nothing that I really did. It's mostly that React Native makes this all possible. But I did sort of build a very simple high-level system that allows you to edit code, right? We can set the background color to blue. And it's updating on mobile and web. Now, aside from this very basic demo, I don't have too much else to show you in terms of the code because I'm in the midst of adding a full-fledged permission system to this such that it can go onto production. Because just like how your code updates in production, and you want that code update to be, you need to be able to push that change to your clients. And you need to be able to do that on mobile such that your mobile app users are always looking at the most recent code. And you want to be able to do that on web. Usually people are refreshing pretty quickly, so that's not much of a problem. But these days, in these long-lived web applications, sometimes even Gmail will be like, oh, hi, we need to update your application. It's like, well, don't tell me that, Gmail. Just run the new application, run the new code. So my theory, and this is like highly controversial, and I expect a lot of pushback on this, but my theory is that we should be able to update our code in production just the same way that we update our data in production, which is via the database, via a solid permission model, and in real time. And so that's a very quick sort of intro to what Avon is. This has been possible technically for a little while. For the past year or two, I've been doing a handful of conferences where I've been giving a similar demo where I've been editing code on web and on mobile at the same time. But this hasn't quite been that practical. We haven't actually managed to have an ecosystem that gives us this for a period of time. So it's a little bit frustrating. It's been frustrating because this has been technically possible, be able to share code between web and mobile, but it just hasn't happened. Why hasn't it happened? It's so frustrating. And it's because we've got these massive development communities that are having troubles mixing because there's big companies with sort of entrenched needs. And that's fine, but here I am sort of trying to go in a new direction where I can break free from the existing constraints. And I'm looking forward to sort of making this practical for people. So Kyle was definitely a big inspiration in terms of being one of the first sort of open source entrepreneurs that I had seen and sort of pushing for this Gatsby model. So that's definitely the sort of thing I've been inspired by. And I'd really love to be able to work on Avon full time by just supporting people building apps, building websites and building apps, and hopefully, building a website and apps at the same time. So that's a quick pitch for Avon, and I'd love to hear if you guys have any questions. Oh yeah, yeah, AVEN.
AVEN.
So on Twitter, I've registered the handle. I just haven't tweeted yet because I've been working on this a lot, but I haven't been talking about it at all. So it's Avon_cloud on Twitter, even though this handle has not tweeted at all. But
well, you're also under Eric Vicente, right?
Yeah, Eric Vicente.
Okay, glad I didn't tag the wrong person.
I don't know if the internet has any questions or if there's any way we can find out. But what do you guys think? Is this totally insane?
Yes, and that's awesome.
So this is working in React Native and React.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's using React Native Web to basically render to web and do CSS and JS and all of that.
Have you done any so this is installed on an actual native device right now? Or?
Kind of. So this is currently running inside of Expo. It's possible to do it pure React Native, but Expo provides so much benefit for getting up and running here. So I'm just building on Expo for now.
And so the real-time connection, is that intended to be even when the app is live, you'd be able to push things into it immediately?
Yeah, so that's the idea. I think it's really important for development, obviously.
Right.
But in production, I think it should be possible. I don't quite have that out there yet, but I definitely think it should work. I've been prototyping on Avon.io, and I don't quite have things wired up properly, but it does actually subscribe in real time. So this is connecting to a production WebSocket server because I'm just running the exact same code. I probably might want to turn that off. If this site got a lot of traffic, the WebSockets could very quickly inundate my servers. I'm not fully prepared for it, but I don't see any reason why we shouldn't be able to do that. Yeah.
Yeah, I talked to some Webpack folks that the same hot module replacement you do in development, there's no reason you can't do that in production.
Totally.
So with Gatsby, if we could ship, update bundles, or some sort of static representation of diffs between versions or something.
Yeah.
And then the front end code be I'm on version 27.
Mm-hmm.
I'll just ping back to the server every now and then, oh, version 38 is out. I'll update myself.
Yep.
And just have it behind the scenes, and everybody knows.
Yeah.
The difference.
I mean, that's magical, but wouldn't it be nice if your application data also updated in the same way?
Yeah. So I mean, Gatsby. Yeah, you do that with static data. For any live data you have, that would be more sure.
So the dream is that we can do it with all of the data.
Yeah, it'd be super cool if I realized I had a misspelling in a blog post and I could push a tweak and that just magically updated in front of everybody who was looking at it.
Totally. It definitely. Yeah.
And I mean, it's hard to scale WebSockets yourself, but I mean, there's commercial WebSocket providers that do it pretty easily.
Right.
Quickly for.
I was more worried about the actual JavaScript, like the back-end code just being inundated with like all of the production clients at once. Like if you get onto Twitter, like you've got to or if you get Hacker News or whatever, you need to maintain that flood of.
I was just saying there's like pusher.io, I think is one of them. There's a lot of like kind of web, socket.
Well, the problem is it needs to connect to your database. So it needs to be pushed from the source of the data to the front ends. So you still need some code.
Abstraction. They don't connect directly to the
Definitely.
web server. It's just to that, and then you just push things through it.
But yeah, I'm a little hesitant to do that because right now everything flows through the exact same data pipeline. And I'm happy to sort of go into a little bit more about that. But basically there's one immutable thing. You cannot change these things, but they are content addressable. So if you have the object on the client, you know the ID that the server is going to use as well, because the ID is just a checksum of the content. So you've got these immutable things and you've got mutable things. And that's the only two things. And mutable things have permissions around them. So
what's the hardest piece that you felt like you've done so far in getting Avon where it is now?
The biggest challenge that I've kind of had to face. It's been a lot of work to just write all of the code. I can't. I think the biggest challenge is to sort of build on top of the right pieces. Because if I choose the wrong set of dependencies, this whole project is going to be irrelevant in a few months. And so that I feel is one of the biggest challenges, right? Like, for example, I think Meteor would have been a lot more like it would have survived and thrived more if it didn't depend on MongoDB, right? So that's why I'm building on Postgres and SQLite, because those are non-controversial. I'm building on, that they're used very widely. I'm building on React and React Native and JavaScript because that's non-controversial. But there are some things that I've decided to not use that would have provided a ton of benefit. So turning away from things like Flow and GraphQL and all of the type systems for now, it's been probably the most challenging piece personally, because I'm just writing untyped JavaScript, and it's not that I think that's right. I think that we really desperately need a type system in Avon, but I don't want to adopt a type system that's half-baked or is only going to be like working with part of the system. It needs to work holistically. So that's why I'm not using GraphQL, because GraphQL, as powerful and amazing as it is, it basically only ensures your types between the client and the server, but ignores the types on the client and on the server. So you're left with the challenge of mashing the type system on your client into the GraphQL, client, whatever, and same on the server. So my hope, what I'm eyeing, but I haven't committed to yet, is Reason. My hope is that we can start porting all of our JavaScript modules over to Reason, and then there will be a type system that we can use in the same way that GraphQL gets used to make sure that all of the requests are type safe, to make sure that when one module depends on another module, whether or not that other module is a full folder, whether or not it's on your same client or over the network, regardless, you're going to be able to access it.
Very cool.
Hopefully that makes a little sense.
Awesome.
Well, cool. Thank you guys so much for indulging me.
So Shannon is next, and then give you a bit of time to set up. We can take a little break too, in case
Yeah.
you want to stretch. We've had a solid 50 minutes of talking. So bathroom break or drink break or whatever. We also have mangoes and like little bit of almonds.
Nice. The Patreon budget.
What?
The Patreon budget.
Yeah.
I like it.
Oh wait, maybe I don't think I have
Bay Area Transit.
Oh,
it's
Oh wait, is this just
Oh, no, yeah.
issue mine? That's fine.
That's okay. What's your name? I'm Ben. Great to meet you, Eric.
At first, I was like, what's your name? Avon.
Yeah, no, I just saying Avon again.
Yeah, it's like, oh, okay.
No, I didn't name it after
I was
myself.
looking up. I'm sorry, I missed the beginning. So,
No worries. Yeah, it's a fun project. The code base is about a year old. I left Facebook in January to do this basically full time.
Oh wow.
Yeah. I'm also working on a React Native project called React Navigation. I don't know if you've used React Native at all, but it's like the go-to JavaScript navigation library for rendering your header, rendering your tabs, rendering your drawer, and helping you write code to navigate across your application.
That's also your product?
Yeah.
That's a tough space.
Isn't it? Thanks, man. I know. It's like because yeah, I mean, people have widely different expectations for what they want in terms of like their React Native views and everything. And
I feel like that.
Would you say that you're more liked or less liked than the React Native products?
I probably less liked because I mean seriously though, because in React Native the navigation story has never been good.
Yeah.
Like ever, and it's just not been a solved problem. So basically, due to choices, I mean, basically the technology itself is very difficult to integrate with native navigation. And that leaves us to basically re-implement all the other navigation, which in a way is great. I'm happy that we're re-implementing because it means that we can give JavaScript developers all the power, all the control, all the customization. They can do whatever they want. And then as long as we make something that looks enough like the platform, such that the end users are happy, like, oh, it looks kind of like Apple's components, then I'm really happy that we're doing it because it gives people complete control to push forward into the future. And because it's all JavaScript, like it'll support the next platform too. So, you know, if people like the style of headers that we've implemented, you know, that currently mimic Apple's header on iOS, maybe some new, you know, Windows Phone platform will come around one day and we can just copy the same code straight over or to Oculus or whatever else is coming next.
Yeah. Does the team at Facebook know about the Haven project? Is it like on their radar?
I've told them that I'm working on it. I haven't demoed it to anybody until now, so.
I missed that. Super fun.
It's just like a hello world basically. You know,
It's half a battle.
yeah, you change some code on you change some code and it changes in your web browser on your app. Yeah. But it does mean I've had to sort of ignore a lot of code that people have written and that people rely on, like Webpack and tons of other stuff.
To get it to work, or just
Say again?
to get it to work, you have to ignore it to get it
Well,
to work, or just 'cause it's a choice.
It was a choice because I could have used Webpack for like live code reloading, but then I would have needed to have a different system for live code reloading on React Native, or run the whole React Native packager on the side, which some people do. You know, you can run both packagers side by side, and they're looking at the same code. I thought that was just really, really gross.
Just React Native.
I thought that was
really gross.
Webpack doesn't use Webpack, or sorry, React Native does not use Webpack. There is one project called Hull that basically is Webpack for React.
Why doesn't React
Yeah,
Native
it's
so
interesting.
It's a good question.
similar problem, right?
Yeah, so a lot of the development of Webpack and the React Native packager, which is now called Metro, that was done at the same time, and at the time Webpack was far too slow. Like if React Native was starting today, Webpack 4 is likely to be fast enough. I haven't done any tests, but I'm just speculating. But yeah, so there's a team at Facebook working on the packager there, and they're also using that to package Facebook.com like web stuff now as well.
Oh, really?
Yeah. It is. I think it's a pretty promising packager, but yeah.
That's interesting. I mean, there's sort of we know the Code Sandbox guys, and they've hacked Webpack so that it can run in the browser, which is a whole
Oh, in the browser, yeah.
separate, a whole different set of constraints. But I mean, it's challenging when you have like multiple different implementations, and then you would have to keep in track with both of the dependencies and make sure they have similar feature sets and whatever else.
Totally. And so this is you have to do a huge amount of work to do this for live code reloading. That's just for development. What about like your data that's changing live in your app in production? Like we spend so much time thinking about development, but I feel like if we move our development tooling and our production tooling onto the same thing, then we can just get all the benefits and we'll actually understand everything way better.
So I think also like a common theme that I'm seeing, at least there's like a lot of common themes here in Gatsby, but like essentially like when WebSockets and when the browsers push WebSockets and service workers, they're sort of like supporting what at the time is like a niche class of use cases. Whereas like now you're coming and we're coming and we're saying, oh, well, what happens if those are like native to the experience? How can you build apps differently? When you can just assume that you can just whatever data you have, you can throw it up into the browser, no big deal. Whereas like for the history of the web, that's very much not an assumption.
True. Very true. Yeah, I mean, I'm excited for the other sort of tools that we can build with it. Like, what I really want to do is I want want to make a whole IDE that's in browser. And so you just like log into my website, and you log in on even.io, and like you're developing. You press another button, and it's in production on web. And by the way, you point your mobile app to this, and you can test it on mobile. So that's should be fun.
By the way, is it too bright for anyone? Okay, cool. Jen, you wanna?
Yeah, sure. Okay, so I'll introduce myself. I'm Shannon Soper, and I started doing UX research for Gatsby in October of last year during a UX bootcamp, like Kyle said. And I've been involved in education and writing for a long time. So coming from that, and then it's been fun. It's been really fun to learn about developing because that's a totally new field to me. So I just want to talk a little bit about what UX research has been like so far and what we're finding out about the entire community. Also, as a side note, I think it's really cool to have an opportunity to meet maintainers in person this week because I want to know what your experiences have been like, being maintainers for Gatsby. So any chance I get to catch up with you all would be extremely valuable. I want to hear what your experiences are like. Okay, so this is... well, essentially, Kyle kind of already mentioned this, but basically we just launched this plugin search, and I wanted to just tell a small story of how we decided to design this. So first of all, in October, I started basically just everyone who tweeted about Gatsby, I would ask them if I could interview them. That's the story of what happened. And some of you I've interviewed, actually. I think I've interviewed I interviewed Mike and Ben and AJ. And those were super valuable, and I've been keeping really careful notes. And those notes started out in other formats. Now they've ended up in Airtable. And basically I'm just keeping some statistics like what roles people have, what company they work for, and especially like what they've liked about Gatsby, both the development experience and also gatsbyjs.org. I've asked about both. And then also what their pain points have been. So I've asked them, what obstacles have you run into? If you overcame the obstacles, how did you do it? If you haven't been able to overcome them, what is keeping you from it, and how can we help? So so we've gathered over 60 interviews so far over the phone, and there will be further interviews that are face-to-face. That's something I'm really interested in now, is either face-to-face or just screen sharing with people, because I want to see people when they're building things, not just what they remember about building it later. So then what I did is used this, I have actually just some acquaintances that have this startup called Unbird, and it helps you analyze free-form text data. So it's helped me basically like count up how many times certain keywords keep recurring in all my interview notes. And so plugins is pretty up there right here. It's the third most common word that people mention. And when I look at that basically category, what I've done is just read through all my notes, and every time somebody mentioned plugins, I would write down, what did they say about plugins? And for the most part, that's what led to the plugin library, because people were like, well, there's so many awesome plugins. I really like them. I don't always know which ones are out there. It takes a long time to scroll through the list. Some of the plugins README files are empty. Sometimes they're like, oh, this is very common too. I want to build a plugin and I don't know how, or I already built one and it was really hard. It took me forever. So we wanted to make it easy to search for plugins and also easy to author plugins. And so the community helped a lot with design. And actually, I don't know if we posted this blog post yet. Probably
No, it's
not.
merged yet.
Yeah, it's not merged yet. Okay, there's going to be a blog post about this that shows basically the evolution of different prototypes that community came up with. And then also Jason spearheaded a plugin authoring docs page. So both of those things are now live, and the next step is that I'd like to keep improving those based off of further research and getting feedback from people. So so that's been a really fun kind of first project to like bring from the very start to at least getting it launched. And a lot of you guys have helped with that. You've been willing to let me interview you, and the community has been super awesome about it. I also want to talk about the next projects. Also, and as far as the design of the project itself, Florian is helping us tweak that. I have very many fewer years of design experience than Florian does, and many other people in the community. So I appreciate in advance all the help that's going to come in that arena. Yeah. So I want to talk about upcoming projects and kind of how we're organizing those. In our GitHub repo, I created 2 different projects, the UX project, and then also, let me show you the documentation project. So I probably need to update these descriptions to like more clearly define what those projects can or ought to include. And I'm also open to suggestions of structuring these things. The documentation project in my mind is like anything we have on gatsbyjs.org that's text that we can improve, that's in the docs, guides, tutorials. And then the UX project would be things that we can build and add to gatsbyjs.org or redesign. So a few projects there. One UX project is building a site showcase. So that's like anyone who's built a Gatsby website, and possibly also starters as well. We think it would be cool to have sort of a searchable showcase that also like pulls things to the front that are like really admirable or like noteworthy for some reason. And this is also based on research as well, because people often have what they've said about starters, especially, is like, oh, I always like, I'll use a starter and then it just doesn't look like I thought it would. Like, because they never got to see a full demo of it ahead of time. Or a lot of people have said that it's taken them a lot of digging to find websites that are doing what they want to do, and then they're looking at the source code to imitate it. And so anything we can do to help them find websites to imitate easier will help them then create their own highly functioning website. So it can be really inspiring to share all this with people, because you know, when you see something that I actually read this book last year that said when humans see like somebody else do something amazing, it's really motivational. It makes, because you think like, well, another human did this, I might be able to do it too. So being able to see examples of the kinds of Gatsby sites that other people have already created can help the ecosystem just keep growing. Yeah, an example of that is like, there are other factors that also enable innovation, like just actual technology innovation. But when the first person broke the 4-minute mile in sprinting and running, a whole bunch more people started breaking the 4-minute mile. So anything we can do to help people see what's possible will mean that more people are going to do it probably. So the site showcase is one of the bigger ones that we'd like to do for a UX project based off of the research that's happened so far. And then in documentation, there's a good growing list here. And I guess I'll just point out a couple things here. We're using some labels, so documentation label and UX design label. And so anytime you see something or think of something in either of these categories, I'll appreciate, yeah, it'll be awesome if you use the labels and we can start working on them. And we're working quite a bit on enhancing the tutorial. One of the other biggest pieces of feedback we got from interviews was people's struggles with GraphQL. And the fourth part of the tutorial is helpful for the people who make it through. And for a lot of people, it takes them a couple tries before they're like willing to go through it all, just because it's really long. So that's part of what we're just restructuring that to divide it up into smaller chunks so that it's not so overwhelming since it's new to most people. Yeah, and then the last thing I wanted to talk about is I just wanted to show a few examples of sites that people built and why I care about user experience research. So this is a lady I talked to in Chicago, and she made a website that teaches you how to take care of a pet jumping spider. And I will tell you what inspired her to make this website. She said, and I quote, "I started getting so many questions on my Facebook page about pet jumping spiders that I thought I better just make a website." So I was like, I had no idea that you could have such a popular Facebook page on pet jumping spiders, but apparently like her requests were exceeding her ability to answer all the questions. So yeah, so she made this site with Gatsby. Yeah, there's advanced helping a sick spider. I actually read through this whole website, and it is literally like complicated information that you probably can't figure out from Wikipedia. Like, she knows her stuff. So yeah, and she has like solutions for all of these, I don't know, passive recessive disorder. Dyskinetic syndrome. Man, I mean, she knows her stuff. So if any of you want a pet jumping spider, you know where to go now. So, and here's another one from an interviewee. He works for ProPublica, and he made this like widget. This is on Gatsby to track the money being raised for the Illinois governor race this year. And so the goal is to make it easy for tons of local news sources to get the correct data on fundraising and put it in their articles, put it on their websites. Here's another example. In London, this lady, Donna Rita, actually, I speak Spanish, and I think her name is Portuguese, so I'm probably saying it wrong. Probably saying it a Spanish way. So she makes pão de queijo. Pão de queijo? Yeah. So it's those little cheese breads. Yeah. I don't know if you guys have had those. They're little rolls. Yeah, they're sure. Goodness. Bread. Buns. Okay. So this is a family-owned business, and this is her making her breads, and now she actually like sells her breads online. And so I kind of just wanted to wrap up with like why I care about user research and why I care about Gatsby. So being able to talk to so many people on the phone has been fascinating because I get to hear about the content of their websites. And the reason I think Gatsby is incredible is because people care about things, whether it's their pet jumping spider and how to help other people raise a jumping spider, or whether it's like sharing election data to make sure we have all the information that voters need to make wise choices, whether it's advertising your family business and making a living for your family. Making the development experience really easy and making sites that run beautifully and perform well is a tool that allows people to reach these goals that are really important to them. And sometimes the goals are fun, sometimes they're like crucially important. There's a whole range of goals that people are reaching, and I think it's really cool that Gatsby is enabling people to reach these kind of goals. And no. Anyway, I probably need to install that later. So I guess my invitation at the end of this is just that I hope I get to know all of you and what your goals are, because you're part of the Gatsby community too, and I want to make sure that as in doing UX research that I'm aware of any ways we can improve the community to also help you reach your goals. So yeah, thank you, and I don't know if we have time for questions. We can.
Yeah, right there.
Okay, so yeah, what questions do you have? Yeah.
I have so many questions, but I'll try them out. And I feel foolish for asking, but I'm super curious. So if you go back to like
Also, Shannon, repeat the questions too. I don't take the microphone.
Oh, sure. Yeah. Okay, I can say it.
Yeah, we weren't doing that earlier.
Okay.
My question is if you go back to the new plugins page.
Oh yeah.
I'm confused. Like the word packages.
Oh yeah, we were talking about this yesterday.
Yeah. So this is the only place I've seen packages, and I saw it in that old sidebar. Did I miss something? Is packages plugins? Are they one in one synonymous?
So the question is, are packages and plugins synonymous? Because this obviously the URL says packages, and then here it says Gatsby library, and then some of these seem to be Gatsby packages. Okay, so yeah, consistency with naming it is something that we want to improve, and we were talking about yesterday because we're trying to think like, well, technically they're all packages. Is that the most common word that people would think of? So we're open to discussion. We kind of settled on plugins, I think.
Yeah.
It's an evolving discussion.
Yeah. The problem is that there's plugins, components, and libraries, just like programming libraries. And so
like Gatsby Link is different. Gatsby Link is not a plugin.
It's not a plugin.
And so we want to make anything Gatsby related searchable. And so packages, they're all NPM packages, which is why I say that. But nobody ever says packages. So anyways, so plugins is probably like because 99% of them are plugins. So that's probably
it's like cool. It's more of like a colloquially true thing.
Plugins, you get libraries and components too. But
I think
for the 1%.
I think what we're ultimately going to end up having to do is probably adding some kind of a checkbox filter that would allow you to say like I only want like Gatsby official components, or I'm only looking for like source plugins, or a way to kind of get through the varying columns.
Filters will be important as the number of plugins and packages and components grows.
So
It's interesting that you called that out because I was like we were talking about that yesterday. I was like one of the key questions around like launching this thing. What do we call it? That's the same thing that you hit on.
I think that nomenclature is important. Like that's one of the most intimidating things when you get started on a project like Gatsby. You're trying to figure out where does everything fit and how does everything talk to each other. And then when you get two words, you're like, we need plugins or packages. Oh, are there both? Do I have to figure out both?
Yes, I think Sam actually Googled Gatsby packages, and then what Google resulted with was a party package you can get if you want to host a great Gatsby party. And you can like get dancers that come and they're like flappers or something. I don't know. So anyway, yeah, words are important. Yeah, it's a really good point, and hope to get more feedback on that. Yeah.
Do you have a sense of like people using Gatsby? How many of them are just people who want to make a website versus people who are, say, professional like developers or in that space?
So are you asking about the kind of website they want to produce? Like, is it a portfolio versus like a website for work? Or you mean like their level of expertise?
Like, who are the people using Gatsby? Are they predominantly software developers?
Yeah. So actually I have, where am I keeping that? I mean, I'm keeping track of their roles.
I think you put in the first blog post, right?
Yeah, that's right. I think about 60 or 70% of people are some kind of web developer. A pretty big portion of them are like freelance, and then lots of them have a position at a company. And then a pretty high proportion of interviewees are UX designers. And then there's like a very few number of people that are doing something else: content writing, data journalism, a CEO who used to be a developer, so basically still a developer, I guess. Yeah. So yeah, why do you ask?
I was interested what level of expertise people feel like they need to have.
Yeah, a lot of people are earlier. That's a question I wish I would have asked earlier on. Is like, how many years have you been doing this? And I will start ask. That's something I'm going to start asking so that because it's useful as we like see like what feedback are we getting from different segments of the population. Like, okay, for someone who's been coding for like a year, what's their experience like versus someone who's been coding for 10 years? Yeah, so that's a really valid question. Really good question.
There's a question from YouTube. They're asking what everyone in the room thinks of doing the desktop app, which is kind of on the same on the same lines. There's an issue 4201 is already open, and there's been some discussion about it. But the general idea is creating either a desktop or a web app or some way to let people manage their Gatsby sites natively.
Yeah. So the question, just in case you didn't
drop down, you're like, good at the whatever site.
Yeah, the question, if you didn't hear it, is about a Gatsby desktop app, and there's a GitHub issue about this very topic. Yeah. I wouldn't say like anything from research has necessarily pointed to this, although it's possible that it might solve some problems that people are running into or pain points. Or what I'm thinking is probably solve problems for people who I haven't even interviewed yet, really.
Well, and I think the other, sorry, I'm yelling so that hopefully.
Yeah, sure.
The other question that I have is like, who would we be targeting with it? Like, what problems are we solving? Because Gatsby consumes from like Contentful or the Netlify CMS. So we're not building a CMS, like the native app wouldn't be the content management area. So what does it do? Is it for installing plugins? Is it for choosing a starter? Why should it exist?
Like if you're just building a website from Markdown, which is like a common kind of static site generation, like if that's your source, like then anyone can do that if they know Markdown, less the fact that they need to understand how to set up a whole development environment just to get that to build, right? Like,
sure. So like Shen, you did some in-person like observations, and they're like, oh, I don't have Node installed. How do you install Node? Right.
Oh man.
Yeah, setting up the development environment for someone who's new is a lot.
So I mean, if you were just building like a Markdown site, you had an Electron app, you have everything right there. You can say like, I'd like to see this in a web browser now.
I
don't know what use case, like if that's a big use case, but it's.
Yeah, I mean, it could be for small teams.
It can abstract away all of the actual like usage of.
Yeah. It's like for some people who are like, for really experienced programmers, I don't think it matters too much. Like, I don't know that I would use it, to be honest. But for people who are kind of intermediate, they're like, oh, how do you do command line stuff again? I forget. And like they have Node installed, they've run Gatsby before, but they're just like, it's been 2 months, and they're like, I don't remember how to do this. But if it's an app, then you just like go to your site and you click run development server, and then it starts. So it definitely solves problems for them, even if they potentially could do it. I mean, they can be successful now, but it'd make it simpler to be successful with this. And I also think it like expand the audience of like kind of like you were saying, Jason, just like people who could never get Gatsby running right now.
Squarespace audience.
Sorry, what?
Squarespace audience.
Yeah, I was actually going to say the same thing.
People who are like tech curious, but they don't have the experience or just like the raw willpower to like, grind through 8 hours of learning how to install Node and do command line stuff and on and on and on to get to going. But they'd be like, oh, it'd be super fun if I could just click, download and then click as install starter and I'm playing with it. This is fun. I'm writing React code.
Well, I also think there's a good argument for like you could potentially make an argument that like no one ever needs to get desktop app, but like
tons of people.
That's like a ton of people use that, and they're clearly working with code. No, but so that actually, that makes a strong argument that like
professional,
even if we don't have like clearly developers are using desktop apps for certain workflows. So this could be something that would be really beneficial to a whole segment that like maybe we don't identify with because maybe we're all like super hackers in the command line, but like, you know, that's not.
What about debugging? Like if something goes wrong now, I think with Gatsby specifically, I'm always like diving in, trying to figure out what's going on. If I was using a desktop app and something goes wrong, it's like, okay, the error ball's up and now I just have
all bugs are now fixed.
Oh,
so-
bugs are fixed now.
Well, I think
We don't have.
I think that
no one has ever seen an obscure Webpack error.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
What's that bubble up through the UI? Now you're like, where do I click to
But I
fix?
think so. I think that puts the onus on us as maintainers to expose
Right.
better error messages.
Right,
So
right.
you know, something that we've seen happen in React that's been really strong is like their error messages are excellent now. They
Right.
give you like a link in the
Right.
error that takes you to the fix. So if we did that for people in the UI, and the other thing too is that like if you're using a UI, we control that workflow. You're clicking a button to then we insert the config for you. So some of those config errors are going to go away because we're testing those workflows.
Yeah.
Hopefully.
Well, obviously, and like there are always ways to break it.
Yeah.
But you know, if we are working on better error writing or error handling workflows, where when something goes wrong, we go, oh, this is probably a config error. Here's the page to go like get resources on config errors, and here's our chat to say like, hey, share your config code. We'll like hit this button to copy paste your config, and just Control V in this chat room, and we will help you. You know, there are a lot of ways that we could approach that workflow to make it less painful for people who aren't particularly tech savvy.
The other audience that's interesting here is folks who are developers but who have little or no front-end experience, who things like Node, NPM are like unfamiliar to them and they don't have them installed on their computer. I think folks who are more like front-end heavy like are reticent to jump into back-end ecosystems, not necessarily because of their unfamiliarity, more than because they're inherently understandable, and the reverse applies as well.
Yeah.
It sounds like we should have a topic later.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I guess for the online listeners, the central message is if you're interested in the Gatsby desktop app or in discussing it, hop on the issue because there's lots to talk about with it. And probably just requires us thinking about the audience, getting to know like and what our goals are, like what audiences we want to reach. And if that's a good way to get there, then it might be a good idea. Yeah. What other questions do you have? I don't know if we have more time.
Yeah, there's a bit more time.
Okay.
Jason's last speaker. So.
Okay.
Cool. Thanks,
Yeah.
Jen.
Great. Thanks.
Cool. So, 5 minutes. I'm good. I'm going to listen to
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that's what comes down.
It's the only thing.
Yeah.
Table.
Yeah.
Easy to use it.
Yeah.
I was looking at the comments, but it seems like they started maybe an hour after the YouTube started. There were a couple questions during yours that were you able to find them?
Yeah.
Yeah, it should be up there. So it's basically like.
I was just
thinking
I was
about
like, wait, why do I?
That's always a good tip.
Sorry, yeah, aside from the ability to make iPhone and Android apps for resident users.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, they got it. Someone asked, like, how is this different from React Native, or from Meteor other than the React Native part? Well, I guess the answer there is that Meteor doesn't auto ship code for you, whereas that's an eventual feature. Right, and that's what I'm trying to support, yeah.
I think they start Googling how things like universal JavaScript is defined in server. Whenever you have JavaScript client, I like
Server mobile, yeah. Yeah, totally. Oculus, right, all the different things.
You're trying to overwriting.
Well, I mean,
you have like
here's like a giant document. Here's the talk that I want to figure out like, why does software die and how can I prevent myself from dying. So you need to make sure that you don't depend on things that get differently. You need to make sure that you support every platform. Full stop. You need to
you just support. And then yeah, you need to do useful things. Maybe it's just free. Oh, it needs to be open source because if you're proprietary, you're gonna get like acquired or
Someone else open source.
well, you think so, but then why is like Slack still alive with Rocket Chat? Bro, no one even knows what Rocket Chat is. It's still an open source implementation of Slack.
I only know that Rocket Chat existed because when they were talking about wait,
Why don't you just ask users
Oh, I see. They were considering. Yeah, and they just had it on Discord, right?
just pull it back.
Yeah.
So there was
How to prevent software projects from dying.
So you're gonna add some like kind of control code to it?
Well, what I'm gonna do
Like,
is
should have
Rebuilds everything.
Yeah.
okay, so my master plan is to convince people to pay me to build websites now. Then I start doing that, and then I also subcontract a bunch of that work. And like it's all the same platform, like the subcontractors still learn SEO and everything, even though they're building either websites, they're still all learning. And then eventually I'll be able to use all of these subcontractors as a training network for somebody I actually able to say, task this coaching, like this is the feature I want, and this is the code of the output. So we can just train against that. And if the tasks are simple enough, then we can just have AI that's able to write code. So next time you want to add a feature to your app, you like open up Siri or something, you like put it there. No, make it green. And now when you tap it, go to the website. You know this other
Yeah, like mining code, so then like as the network even as the market and users get larger, you're just like taking 10% CPU across more and more devices.
And like CPU, I'll get human man
built-in best practices.
data. Yeah, it's all the same thing.
You can like Google with their like which one of these have cars in it sort of thing.
Yeah.
You do the same thing. So they're like, hey, do you think